everyone, and welcome to Inchin Closer's event about job opportunities for Mandarin language learners, specifically in the finance, investment, and banking space. My name is Nazia, and I am the CEO and founder of Inchin Closer, and I will be taking you through the introduction of what Inchin Closer has now become as a comprehensive Mandarin language institute. And then we have two speakers. Mr. Phani is from ICICI Bank, and he will be talking about his experience of leading India's largest private bank in Shanghai. And we also have Ms. Garima Arora, who's an HSK 6 graduate from Nanjing University and has been working with Bank of China as an executive for the past few years. So Garima has completed her master's in Chinese International Education from Nanjing University and has cleared the HSK Level 6 in 2013. During the 4 years she spent in China, she studied, worked, and traveled across the country, gaining a deep understanding of Chinese culture and society. Since her return in 2013, Ms. Arora has continued working in the India-China space. First, with the India-China Economic and Cultural Center, and later managing the China desk at the Confederation of Indian Industries. She now works as the executive with Bank of China, Mumbai, where she is accredited with being the first Indian employee hired by Bank of China. Her responsibilities include assisting in the establishment of a branch office in Mumbai, HR, admin, and other back-end operations. One of her main tasks is to handle the cultural differences between her Indian and Chinese colleagues.
Like you all, I was a student. I'm still a student of Chinese language, Mandarin Chinese language. And this is just a personal experience that I would like to share about how I'm going to focus more about learning and opportunities, how I started, how I got interested in Chinese language and how I managed to go to China and then what was my experience there. And then I came back. So, it's just a very, very personal experience that I think that might help you understand. For those of you who are learning Chinese right now, you'll have certain questions about how to go forward. As a normal student, I graduated. I did my undergrad from Delhi University, and then I was like, all my friends, they wanted to do the regular MBA, MBBS, so go for masters, and I always wanted to do something different. And just I didn't want to get lost in that rat's race doing like 2-year course and then ending up in a normal BPO or other job. So somebody suggested to me, and this is back in 2007, that why don't you, give it a try to Chinese? Why don't you learn Chinese? And that's how I was like, okay, this sounds weird. I've never heard anybody learning Chinese. So let me just start it. And I got enrolled into Delhi University. I did my 2 years post-diploma in the language. And there it was like the best feeling that I used to get was every time I would tell people that I'm learning Chinese, the expression that they would say, why are you learning Chinese? Who learns Chinese? So, but as I got, and that is what, gave me the kick to learn more about it, to understand more about the language and culture. And I managed an admission with the full scholarship at Nanjing University, where I did my master's in Chinese International Education. And there I spent 4 years. My master's course was 2.5 years. I was working, I was traveling. When I say language, learning a language, I think it's not just about learning a language. It's about understanding, which is very, very important. Words, you can't just translate them simply into English. It's about, you need to know the background. You have to go back into the society and how people behave, the way they express themselves, and what do they mean when they say a particular thing. I think that is more about learning a language rather than just getting some vocab out of the dictionary and learning those things. And it has a lot of things to be attached into the cultural aspect of it as well. So, China is a country, you all know, most of you have lived in China or you've been learning Chinese language, you've traveled to China. That China is a country with a very, very strong cultural values. And, it is very, very important when we are learning about a country. One is language, but we have to learn about the country. We have to learn about the culture. And at the same time, it is very important to learn to appreciate, we need to appreciate about their culture as well, especially with a country like China. Whenever you get an opportunity to work with Chinese clients or you're working with a Chinese in a Chinese company, you all know about that word, guanxi, which is a very, very important. So in China, that guanxi relationship is not just formed, while having your piqiu, like beer or for food, but it's also how you show mutual respect to their culture. You have to show respect to their culture, and that is how things is. People will try to trust you, and that is how Chinese people work. They work majorly on the trust factor. I used to work with the Indian companies having operations in China, and Chinese companies who are interested in India, and you would see that there is so much potential which exists between the two countries, and they're still trying to explore the opportunities. And we've seen in the last 10 years that the Chinese investments in India, they've increased drastically, and there is a lot of more, there's much more scope in it. And the thing is that the Chinese companies, they are looking for the local talent. They're looking for to hire the local talent in India. The thing is, what I have seen is in India, people, they will learn a few, they'll probably do HSK level 1, HSK level 2, and that is where they'll get some quick jobs and they lose interest. But I would here strongly say that if you kind of stick to it, see, language, mastering a language, we haven't even mastered, being an Indian, we haven't mastered Hindi, and I haven't mastered Hindi or English. So language you will never be able to master. But if you know the basic essence of language, and if you understand the culture of it, and that comes, once you are regularly in touch with that particular thing. Like, I think Inchin app is a great way, you can still, even if you're not able to attend classes, you have that app whenever you have time, you can do that. So I think it is very good what Inchin Closer is doing, and whatever Nazia just said, I think she was absolutely right in that there are a lot more opportunities to come in this particular sphere. Thank you.
Thanks, Garima. I'd also now like to introduce you to Mr. Phani Kiran. Mr. Phani Kiran has the unique experience of working for both India's largest public and India's largest private sector banks in Shanghai, which is the world's most dynamic financial capital. During his banking career spanning 30 years, Mr. Phani has spent 13 years overseas, with a major part, 11 years, in mainland China. He is currently the Chief Executive of ICICI Bank Limited, Shanghai branch, since 2014. While at ICICI Bank, Mr. Phani is responsible for upgrading the representative office to a branch, formulating strategy for building asset base and creating revenue streams, ensuring adherence to regulatory and compliance requirements, and recruitment of staff, amongst many other responsibilities. Prior to working at ICICI Bank in Shanghai, Mr. Phani worked as the alternative Chief Executive of ICICI Bank Limited, Hong Kong branch. Earlier, Mr. Phani was Vice President for Credit and Trade with the State Bank of India, Shanghai branch. A modest Mandarin speaker, Mr. Phani commands great respect for his knowledge of Chinese business etiquette and culture. As a result of his position, he is also the financial controller of India of the Indian Association, an eminent community of Indian businessmen in China. Welcome, Mr. Phani.
See, the Chinese economy, when compared with India, it is quite big in terms of almost 3 to 4 times. The rating of the country is stable with NA, and this is one of the few economies that have turned positive in the GDP growth. Other country being Taiwan and few other small countries. Otherwise, most of the other countries had a negative GDP growth last year. So if you see the other statistics like the FDI, the investment that is coming into the country, and at the same time ODI, the investment that is going out of the country also is hundreds of billions of dollars. It's the second largest recipient of the FDI other than US if you take it. So that way in all financial parameters, China has been having an edge over other countries. That made them as one of the superpowers, easing of doing business. Also, it's much ahead of other countries. If I go to the Chinese banking system, it is controlled by people like RBI. We have a People's Bank of China, which controls the day-to-day operations of all the banks. And the government, in its endeavor to develop the financial system, has developed special banks like construction bank, like an industrial bank, like an agriculture bank, and a Bank of China, and a China Merchants Bank, Bank of Communication. Like that, each of the segment was made. The Chinese banking industry is almost $40 trillion in terms of assets. And the four largest, bigger than many of the American banks. The CFOC, each of the bank has a setup of almost 20 to 25,000 branches. When we compare ourselves with the nearest big bank in India, State Bank of India, which has about 20,000 branches. But if you compare China, you have four such banks which are having more than 20 to 25,000 branches. So the volume, the size, the asset size, everything is comparably quite big when compared with other countries. So historically, India and China have a long-standing relationship way back when people like Phani Kiran and Chun, they all traveled this. And top two, it comes in either top two or top three as the largest trading partner for India. But the vice versa may not be true, because China's export-import is about $4 trillion. In that, hardly $80 billion may not come to much percentage. But whereas if you see vice versa, it is quite big for India. In terms of the value proposition, India exports a lot of raw material type of, which does not have much value. Whereas when China exports a lot of manufactured goods, specialized goods, due to which there's a huge deficit for India. So if you see, there are some almost 95,000 Indians who are in China, mostly out of which 20% are medical students. So while the investment from India to China is very limited, China has been very aggressive in the recent few years, like last 4-5 years, where billions of dollars is flowing from China to India. Indian investment into China is coming in pharmaceuticals and IT services. Like you have all the big IT companies, Infosys, TCS, or Wipro, etc. Pharma companies, every pharma company is setting up its manufacturing base in China, because going forward, the medical equipment, medical health related aspects is going to be a big business in China. Comparatively, if you see, there are about 800 Chinese companies in India. So Chinese entrepreneurial skills are very good. They are trying to expand. Now they feel there's a lot of saturation that is coming in China. Therefore, they're trying to invest in other countries. So they see India as a real promising country. Between 2000 and 2010, if you see, with a small amount of $2.7 billion in 2001, it has grown to $58 billion of trade in 2010. The decade 2000 to 2010 was one of the major trade partners that has happened. Then Modi has taken over, and there were a couple of rounds of interaction between both the premiers. The trade began to grow again from 2016 onwards. And while it was in 2000 to 2010, it was trade that was happening. From 2015 onwards, it was an investment that started flowing between the countries. The confidence built up. Between 15 to 19, there was a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs coming into India. Just to add to what Garima said, so being in China, like China is unique. It's the entire, unlike in India, see, every province speaks its own language. Somebody speaks Tamil, somebody speaks Hindi, somebody speaks Bengali. But China is a unique country where 1.3 billion population, everybody speaks only one language. And therefore, the Mandarin becomes a very key, sorry, its learning Mandarin becomes key for survival as well as communicating in a local language. Even the simplest of the simplest, like a train or a metro station or an airport, nobody will understand in China if you call by the English name. You have to go into Chinese and you need to learn Chinese too. So the success of a foreigner in China will only depend upon the command he has over the language. All business meetings, whatever I do, will be in Chinese. You can still survive without knowing the language. But the problem is you will be left apart. The person will be left apart. When you meet, go for a meeting, there'll be niceties exchanged. Hello, hi, that's all. After that, they'll be talking amongst themselves with Chinese. So it will be a big handicap without the language. And when you sign the documents, all the documents will be Chinese or bilingual. But as per the Chinese law, only the Chinese version holds good in case of any dispute. So it becomes imperative for you to learn a language. But if you're a beginner and if you're looking for a job, if you want to communicate with people, Mandarin becomes very important. So coming to the hiring, etc., in financial sector, honestly, nowadays, even in India, there is a bit of challenge that is happening because the routine jobs like clerks or officers, etc., are getting phased out with computerization. Therefore, one needs to have something additional to what you have. So you need to develop your own USP. Expecting to be in finance, in banking is very limited because there are only two Indian banks in China. And similarly, there are two Chinese banks in India. However, China has mastered in fintech. You have a lot of opportunities in fintech. Similarly, you have a lot of companies. If suppose you have a banking knowledge and then you are working with an IT company, there are certain things called BFSI, banking finance services, where you can be a part of the technology team at the same time look into the banking operations. So another thing is the first entry level, definitely if somebody wants to get a job in, he has to know Chinese. Mid level is something which is manageable because there will be only few staff at a middle level. But when you're as a beginner, you need to start learning language. So it becomes very, very critical that knowledge of Chinese is, without that, it is very difficult for you to perform the duties. Other aspect is the just make yourself a SWOT analysis, like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the opportunities and the threats you have, and try to arrive at a USP. What is that you have a specific, unique selling proposition which you think you can get a job? Today, even in India, if you want to go for a job, there are thousands of people who apply for it, right? So there is something you need to develop, that unique skill which differentiates you from others. Important aspect for people who are coming as expats is the culture, which Garima also touched it. But however, just to give a piece of it, like we have a lot of superstitions, even the local Chinese have a lot of superstitions. Like nobody gifts a watch as to somebody, because watch is not something to be gifted in China, which in India for every marriage, every function, you'll gift a watch as, give it as a gift, a watch as a gift. So it becomes culturally very, very important to understand one other thing. Therefore, the only mantra what I learned after struggling in my first, when I came in 2005, I did not have so many Indians in China. So I learned it the hard way. First, unlearn what is right in India. Don't expect that it is going to be right in China. So when you start with a clean slate, there is every possibility that you can learn faster about the culture, about the country, and then try to adjust or accommodate towards what, how, and you can perform successfully in this country. Just to add further on this, thought process of the people between the two countries are different. So this is very important. Business etiquettes are different. Like Chinese would like to wine and dine first, and then they'll talk business. But in India, first we'll try to see an agreement is done, everything is done, then we'll go and celebrate a party. So slightly it is different. Trade between China and India, my experience of the last, because I am following this country since 2005. I stepped in this country in 2005, stayed here till 10, came back to India, again entered China in 2014. So I've been following this country since 2005 onwards. There is no downfall. There may be up and down. There may be few percentage points up one year, next down. But the criticality of the relation, the criticality of the product, etc., remains. India keeps buying from China. China keeps selling to India.
Thank you very much, Mr. Phani. We're going to head into a more interactive session. We're going to have a panel discussion. My partner and colleague, Wang Xiaojie, is going to conduct the panel discussion with both Ms. Garima as well as Mr. Phani. So on to you, Xiaojie.
Sure. Thank you everyone for participating in this session. And first of all, happy Lantern Festival. It's actually a very popular festival in China tomorrow. It's basically a festival for family get-together reunion. So I think it's a very good time for us to have this event. And this is a lantern that we typically have for this event, just to add some festival touch to this event. So first of all, thank you so much, Mr. Phani and Garima, for your insights and sharing of your personal experience. So I think because the focus of this event is to help our students to understand the future potential career options for them in this space. So I think both of you touched upon a bit about the ins and outs of the banking industry in this particular Indian-China space. But I think it'll be very interesting for our students to know a bit more about your views on the potential career aspects, career prospects in the broader financial industry. So I guess there. As Mr. Phani has mentioned, in the past 2 to 3 years, there has been an increasing number of Chinese FDI into India to fund Indian startups, through venture capitals and private equity firms, and of course, recently there are also a lot of Chinese companies who are, funding the debt market in India through NBFC, and of course, there are also companies who are, investing in the public market. So I was wondering if both of you could maybe share a bit more, in terms of apart from banking, because I think you mentioned that there are only two Indian banks in China, two Chinese banks in India, but on the broader financial, space, there are a lot more other options that everyone can consider. So if you could maybe touch a bit more on that, I think that would be very interesting for our audience. Mr. Phani, would you like to go first?
Okay. As I said earlier, the two banks on both sides, see, both countries, if you see, are too big in sizes. It's like if one bank is the Bank of China, for example, has opened a branch in Mumbai, it cannot cater to whole of India. Similarly, if ICICI Bank opens one branch in China, a country which is more than 3 times bigger than India, it's impossible to cater to the entire. Normally, each of the bank is very successful in their respective countries because they have, ICICI Bank has 5,000 branches, or Bank of China has some 15,000-20,000 branches in China. So that's how it's. But when we are coming into another country, we are coming with a very unique or specific purpose that we will be doing this particular business. I will be doing only trade finance. I will not do retail. I will not do derivatives, or I may not do investment banking. I may not. So there will be very limited opportunities in that space. However, nowadays, traditional banking, funding, etc., is moving out into a non-traditional ways. Now, so many fintech companies are coming. Visit China, there's a run for money on the banks today because there's so much of disintermediation that has happened through fintech, Alipay, Alibaba, then other fintech companies, they have started lending and financials. The balance sheet side is more than $200 billion. Imagine no Indian bank has a 200, other than State Bank, has a $200 billion balance sheet, whereas an Ant Financial has. So think out of the box and see whether we can fit into those type of jobs. Those type of jobs also, when I say it's not just a sitting job or a clerical job or a supervisory job. How can your technological background or your language plus some other qualities in you can fit into that financial sector? So going forward, it's very difficult if I'm saying like I want to work in ICICI Bank like what I do in India, I want to go and work in other countries. So the jobs, a lot of disinformation, the job roles are changing. The general jobs which we think are moving out from the industry. Either you're technically qualified with the language or having banking knowledge along with language and a bit of technology, you have to identify in that particular area where you can fit. So expectations are that you should be different from others.
And working for Bank of China here, and what I feel is like right now, if we want to strengthen our operations, we need people in the business team who know both English and Chinese, because most of our clients here in India, like 60% of our clients here are Chinese companies. As you know, there's a limitation of Chinese expats in a country like, Mr. Phani told you about. There's a limitation of Indian expats in China. Similarly, there are similar regulatory requirements in India as well. So there are not many Chinese here. So that's why we need local people, local Indian employees who can sit and deal with Chinese people here. Because most of the Chinese companies there, you would see their CEO or somebody would be a Chinese person, and the documents will come from China. So they need, all the head offices are in China. So they need somebody who can write emails, who can communicate, who can, talk and understand their problems and issues. So this is where I think it is very important, which, so in business development, definitely in the banking industry.
For the sharing. So I guess the next questions, I would like to move to the actual hiring part. So say, I guess for Mr. Phani in your experience, I'm sure you have hired, I guess, Indian employees in your Shanghai branch, where they would have sort of the cross-cultural experience. So what kind of like key factors like you would look at when you hire this kind of employees for your team, and also in your observation, what kind of staff tend to have the best performance, like according to like the key factors that you kind of evaluate them on.
You mean the Indian staff who are joining in China or expat staff?
I would say like mostly for Indian staff, that have joined the office in China.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, see, I had a very bitter experience because today I may speak like this, but when I joined, I had a very bitter experience because I come with an Indian mindset, and when I came with it, and we expect that an Indian should do all the work that is possible. If not we try to tell him you do this job also, this job also. But in China, it is very clearly marked that they do this particular job that is given to them. It's like a machine, on the assembly line. It so happened on one day there was a holiday in India, so we did not get much of the through the Swift and all. So we told them the guy was sitting idle. So I called him and said, look, you're idle. Why don't you do the other job? The other fellow is having a lot of work. Why don't you share it? He immediately saw my face and said, sorry, it's not my job, and went and sat. And I observed, I was very, because I felt I'm a senior, I already have put up 15 years. How dare this guy? It's insubordination. How can he tell me this? After all, he's a junior guy. Then I was sitting and observing. He went and sat, but he was sweating a lot, saying that, "Arey, what?" He was also not happy to say that, but he has said that. Then he went away that day. Next day morning he came. I was still carrying that in my mind. Wow, how can he say this? But next day he came. He started doing this work. The point what I want to mention, the observation is, in China you follow a standard operating procedure. You should teach the person first to say that these are the jobs you're supposed to do and he has to do them. And without teaching, the Indian mindset says, okay, once you join the bank or an organization, now start doing all the work that is given to you. So when we recruit people, mostly if expat staff who come from India are already successful in the bank at the various levels, we try to tune them towards the Chinese culture. So I make it a point to tell them that first unlearn, as I said earlier, unlearn what you've learned in India. Don't expect the same style of functioning to happen. The person comes, he'll come on time, he would like to leave on time. The Indian mindset expects that you have to sit for some more time and see that it is completed. No, in China, you have to follow the time. 12 to 1, for example, is the lunch time. During the lunch time, half an hour he has a lunch. Then next half an hour he'll go and sleep, but he'll not do the work. Whereas in Indian mindset, you expect that why are you sitting, why are you sleeping? So traditionally, that is the culture in China, that you have a lunch time, your 1 hour of lunch time is your private time. So you eat lunch for 1 year, you spend half an hour for lunch and then sleep in the chair, or you go out, roam around and come back, but that 1 hour is your private time. Whereas our mindset doesn't accept that, and we'll expect that, anyway, you finished your lunch in half an hour, now start doing the work. So I keep training my people that first observe them, the style. You give them a productive job and expect him whether you're able to complete by evening or not. But you cannot micromanage minute to minute of the person thinking that I am the boss, I'll manage.
That's very interesting insight. Thank you very much. And I guess for Garima, I think it would be very interesting if you could share, based on your experience working for Bank of China, Mumbai, like what kind of key skill sets that you think you have contributed to the company, like based on your experience, whether it could be soft skill or hard skill, that you think will be very relevant for any future in an audience here who are looking into a similar career path in the future.
So I would say, like, today, if we have an opening, for example, and there is a candidate who has this on his CV that he has a certain level of Mandarin language knowledge, trust me, we are definitely going to hire him. because this is the issue that we face here. Like, I'm the only Indian staff who knows Chinese. Like, we have a strength of 32 people, out of which 8 are expats and the balance is Indians. And I'm the only one, who knows Chinese language. And there is a struggle, like, even though all are expats, they do speak English, but then for a boss or when you're working to speak, to have that comfort of speaking the native language and getting that thing done, streamlining it done. It's just, where it takes 1 minute to complete a task. If you're communicating in English or if, you're doing this thing, it takes 5 minutes. So today, if that's why I'm saying, if there is a candidate in whichever role, let it be operations, treasury, business team, if they have this thing on their CV that they know Chinese language, definitely we are going to pick that up. First is because of the language. Second is because of the culture. Like Mr. Phani said, having that, the respect for Chinese culture, though they're in India, but then this is a Chinese bank, and that's what they tell me. We have arguments, with my friendly arguments with my boss that you're in India. He's like, but this is a Chinese company in India, so you have to. So we argue how we have to work. But the thing is, a mutual respect and understanding is very important. So, and though I'm not from the financial background, they've assigned, and Chinese believe in on-the-job learning very much. there are, these big companies, they have their training centers back in head office. So, they will spend time and effort to train you. Like Mr. Phani said, in China, if one task is assigned to you, you have to do that job. So, if they trust you and they know, okay, you know the Chinese language, they'll assign you a particular job. They'll give you time to learn it and, get your expertise in it. So here I have also been assigned internet banking. Why? Because all the systems are from our head office and all our backend systems are in Chinese. Now, no other Indian employee can do that. And all these expats, they are here only for a short term. They don't come here for lifelong. So they are here, they'll be here for 3 years or 4 years, and then they'll go back. So for the bank also, for them also, or in any other Chinese company, they have to train the local staff. And if you know Chinese language, you will have an edge over the others, because you will get that easy access. People will trust you. They'll give you all the important things as well to do it. So this is my experience of the bank, in Bank of China, that if you know
Great.
Chinese language and culture, you will be definitely preferred over a whole lot of people, because they'll train you. They know that, okay, this person knows our culture, appreciates our culture, we'll train the person according to us. So that's a very, very important part.
Great. So take Chinese class with Inchin Closer, and then you get a job. Great. I think based on our with Chinese companies or Indian companies who are trying to operate in each other's market, one of the biggest difficulties that struggle that we often hear from them is that the way to deal with the regulators in each other's country. I haven't heard any company in this space who haven't had any issue in this particular area. And I think given that both of you have set up new branch for Indian or Chinese bank in the different countries, I think it would be very interesting for you to share your experience in dealing with the local regulators, and also trying to help the Chinese or Indian company headquarters understand why things are run this way.
Sure. See, typically when we have to go through the headhunters, whoever it is, wherever it is, like we'll try to see that because it's an Indian bank and we have to work in China, we look for a bilingual where they understand English as well as their knowledge. But there are certain positions like the branch head or a compliance head or a deputy branch head, etc. In these cases, am I audible? Cases, it is the regulator who decides it. So whenever we select a person, so we have to refer the CV. Regulator will study that and then give a response saying that okay, this person is okay, then recruit. In case of a compliance, for example, the regulator says, okay, you recruit him, I will observe him from 6 months. If we like his attitude, then you can recruit him. Otherwise, you have to look for another compliance head. So it becomes very, very difficult and complex because it's a very small market of foreign banks. So a person who works in a traditional Chinese bank, like in a state-owned bank, moving to private sector will be, or coming to a foreign bank will be a challenge. Second thing is in terms of Chinese people are fascinated towards Europe or America. So the first choice will be an American bank, and then a European bank. Finally, they come to the Asian bank. So they're also very choosy. So these are certain challenges when we start recruiting people. So we try to balance, but however, because of this cultural difference, plus that's why we cannot rigidly implement like what a Chinese bank can implement sometimes.
But what I have learned with my BOC experience is that you need to have patience. You need to understand that that's how things are. You're entering into the other's house. So, and that's, it's the rules that play there, and you have to understand and you have to abide by it. Things will take time in both these countries. Things will take time, but I think the thing is to have a cool approach to it, have patience, and try, to figure out, like, you have to make quanchi, you have to find the right people who can guide you properly, who can lead you properly these days. and then get the right knowledge and reach the point where the problem is and try to solve it. Like, go to those people. So the right connects are very important, and patience is very important, and you need to respect the rules of the ground, which I have observed here at BOC.
Great, thank you so much. I think this is towards the end of our session. Is there any questions from the audience? Nazia?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot during the panel discussion, but I can raise one or two. Just a quick, very pointed question actually towards you, I guess, Garima. Is there a specific Mandarin level that is required for speaking and reading to expect a job in a bank? So do you have, for example, an HSK level that you can give someone?
No, see, whenever you will go for an interview, even if you have HSK level 5 or 6, the person will speak to you. They'll have a conversation and they will check your vocabulary. They'll check how fluent you are. So irrespective, even if you have HSK level 6, but you're not fluent, then it doesn't really add value. So for any job that you go, HSK level 6 is important. You need to have that certificate if you're applying for further studies. Therein you need to show a certificate. When you're applying for jobs, it depends how fluent you are at a language. So yeah, certification is not mandatory. It's good to if you have one, but it's not mandatory.
Okay. I'd like to bring Samta in. Samta, are you around? Are you listening in?
Yes, I'm here, Nazia.
Would you, can we draw on your experience about being in China and basically knowing Mandarin? Did it help you later on in getting a job, or has it had no consequence?
So what I will say, I spent 4 years in China, and then 9 years ago, I moved to London. And in my current job in London, I visit China and Taiwan all the time, and I still am the person selected to go to China or Taiwan because of my Mandarin language skills. And I am always the one who is talking to the Chinese investors, and it has helped me all along in my career. It's the best investment I've made in myself.
Awesome. That sounds great. I think that's a really positive note to end on. Thank you so much to all our speakers. Thank you, Mr. Phani. Thank you, Garima. Thank you, Xiaojie, for conducting the panel discussion. And thank you, everyone, for staying on for more than an hour and being a part of our conversation. We look forward to having many such discussions in the future. And please help us spread the word, and hope you can join us in our future discussions as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nazia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shachi.
Thank you.
Happy Lantern Festival.
Thank you. Yes. Hello.